speaking at the University of Houston Clear Lakes Veterans Day celebration. So November 11th, 10:30 to noon at Liberty Park. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm very pleased and proud to be speaking at the Veterans Day.
Well, we are so glad to have you. And we just want to get an insight of you, your life as a veteran, what brought you to this point, and a little bit of what Veterans Day means to you and what it means to you to be a veteran.
Well, that's quite a bill of goods there. I think I'd like to start off by reminding everybody that what's now called Veterans Day was originally Armistice Day. And I do that because I'm not sure in school that they remind people of that.
Right.
And Armistice Day is because we had the First World War armistice was declared at 11 minutes after 11 on the 11th of November, 1918. And for many, many years, that's what it was. In fairly recent times, they've changed it to Veterans Day, which kind of loses some of the focus on it. But it also enables a lot more veterans from a lot of other wars and in the service to celebrate it and be honored. The subject of veterans, I tend to think of it as for veterans of combat, the veterans of wars, because there's an awful lot of veterans we have in times of peace as well. And of course now we've got a lot of military people, Marines, Navy, Army, Air Force, over in the Middle East, dealing with a very tough situation. Unfortunately, it's becoming more and more political and less of a survival kind of situation. So I would suspect that most of the veterans that are going to be here on November 11th will also be concerned about the fact that, here we have Commanding General has requested 40,000 more troops several months ago and still doesn't have those troops. I can say that expecting that by November 11th of this year we probably won't have a decision on that. That's not the way we used to do things. And so veterans, I would assume, are as concerned as I am about how these kind of situations and war against terrorism is going today.
We talked a little bit about education and the students like myself and the education that we have on history, on what, like you said, how it used to be Armistice Day and the history that brought Veterans Day about. What is your take on how important it is to educate students right now?
Well, I think it's very important that the young people of today, which means students all the way from when they start school right up through high school and college as well, be taught about American history. American history is different than the history of probably almost all the other countries of the world. We were established on different principles. We've had probably at least the same amount of wars as other countries have, but they haven't been wars of aggrandizement. We haven't gone out to do things to become the big cheese on the block, for example. We've sacrificed for others. We have usually fought for the freedom of others. We've been fortunate. We're sitting here isolated between two oceans. Can't really say we've ever been invaded. So we've had the luxury of fighting for others in other places. And we haven't attempted to stay there. We haven't claimed the land. The only land that we claim, even after the Second World War, in France and Belgium and Germany, is the cemeteries where we buried our soldiers that fought so well. So unless Americans in school are taught about the history and the sacrifices that we've made, and particularly what our uniformed service members have made, I don't understand how they can have the pride in November 11th that they should.
Right. Yeah. That's understandable. So, you know, you've done this for many years. You've covered a lot of ground, you've flown in a lot of planes, and you've spent a lot of hours in space. So, what is the biggest thing that like you take from the years of your experience, and
What do I take for my life, or as some people put it, what do I think is the most important thing in my life? The public at large assumes the most important thing is the fact that I got to fly in space. Well, I loved that. I enjoyed it. I almost looked at it as a reward for all the other things I'd done in my life, because what truly defines me, even today, was the fact that I became a Marine Corps fighter pilot way back in the early 50s, which makes me an ancient fighter pilot and an ancient astronaut. But what went into becoming a Marine Corps fighter pilot and how I adapted to it, it defined my life. Went back to school, stayed in the Marine Corps Reserve, retired. It's amazing how long ago I actually retired as a colonel in the United States Marine Corps. But that's what really defined my life. Flying in space was a wonderful reward, because the work to get ready to fly in space is so much more difficult than the actual flight itself. So by the time you're trained and ready to go, it's not really a vacation because you're busy all the time, but it seems like that from all the other pressures you've been under.
That's really cool. I mean, it's inspiring just to read and hear about, you know, the things you've seen, the places you've been. And I know you've done a lot since then. You've written a book and hosted a radio talk show, have your real estate license. So what besides, you know, being in the Marines and astronaut?
Well, I'm a compulsive doer, if you will. And whether I like it or not, it took me for a while to admit that one of the things that motivated me was to try to influence others with my opinion. And it can't be with just the volume of what you say. You have to be able to put your thoughts together, and they have to be meaningful. I get very fed up with a lot of the arguments I see today, you know, in the newspapers or on radio, because they're not based, they don't waste their time talking about the facts or what should influence people. They just present opinions, and they argue against other people's opinions and criticize others for their opinions. I did have a radio call-in talk show for about 3 years. I tended to characterize myself as a kind of a poor man's Rush Limbaugh, if you will. He's a much more qualified entertainer than I will ever be, but I like to think that I could cover a lot more subjects knowledgeably. And one of the reasons I enjoyed it is because people maybe first tuned in because there was an astronaut speaking, but I expressed my opinions on all manner of things, and the more controversial, the better. And they were always my opinions, not somebody else's. I was just